はい、ポケモンでパネポンを、ポケモンでパネポンをね、今からやっていくんですが、RTA in Japan のご視聴の皆様、こんばんは。これからね、VS コンピューターモードをやっていきます。早速、もうやっていきます。3カウントで始めていきます。じゃあ、3、2、1、スタート。はい、始まりました。ポケモンでパネポン RTA。カテゴリーは VS コンピューターモード、イージーから V ハード、爆発競り上げオフです。よろしくお願いします。はい、早速、たくさんのね、グッドラックをいただいている間にステージ1のポッポが倒されたところなんですが。
Alright, welcome back everyone. This is RTA in Japan and the English Speedrun Restreams English Restream of RTA in Japan Winter 2025. Next up is Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, and we have two commentators here with us if you would like to introduce yourselves.
今年で発売25周年を迎えました。
Hello, Merry Christmas all. I am ghostkumo.
ポケモンでパネポンはポケモン金銀の譲渡地方を
And I am Ghoul.
今回走る
We're Ghost and Ghoul, commentating not ghosts and ghouls, or ghouls and ghosts. Yes, this is Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, also known as Pokemon de Panapon. This is in the Puzzle League series of games, aka the Panel de Pon series. It's gone by a few names, most famously in the West probably Tetris Attack was the original release for this game, or for this set of games, but this was the one that was on the Game Boy Color, and they naturally, since Gen 2 Pokemon was pretty new at the time, they used it as sort of the basis for the game. Doesn't really have anything to do with Pokemon, it's just kind of an aesthetic more than anything, although it doesn't stop every kid who played this game from saying, boy, I really wanted to use like my favorite starter or whatever. Anyways,
I have very fond memories in the original, like the Pokemon Puzzle League on the N64 of trying to match type weaknesses, even though it did not matter in the slightest.
Yeah, so the runner for this is Shuga. He's going to be running all 5 difficulties of the game. You might notice since we started with the easiest difficulty that things are very, very quick in this game. So really quick to kind of just go over some of the basics. Because this is a Game Boy game, you actually have a smaller board than you do in most other games. I believe it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 rows instead of, I think it's 12 or 13 in normal versions of Tetris Attack / Panel de Pon. So it's a fairly smaller space to work with. Now, the basic idea here, we're 7 stages in and we haven't really explained the mechanics, but there are 7, just said 7. There's, he's on stage 7. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. It is like 3 in the morning here. There's 6 colors. I think you can get to 7, or no, it's the blue triangles. Okay, that is all the colors. And the idea is that you need to line them up into groups of 3. Now, what separates a game like this from something like a Puyo or a Tetris Attack is, or not Tetris Attack, a Puyo or a Tetris like multiplayer type game, and that's the easy difficulty already completed. There's fewer stages on the lower difficulties. You unlock more as you go on, which is your kind of reward for getting better at the game. But you need to line up 3 blocks either vertically or horizontally, and unlike most of those other games, when you set up a clear, the blocks will stay on screen for a little bit, then disappear, and then everything above them will start to fall. In that time, you can actually manipulate your block swapper, which, as you can see, switches 2 blocks adjacent to each other left and right, and you can tinker with the board during the time that blocks are about to clear, which means that you can set it up that another set of blocks will then start to clear, and that creates what's called a chain. Chains are the most effective way of doing damage in this game. Games like Pokemon Puzzle League for the GameCube, Tetris Attack, and many other panel games, they usually show your opponents right before you, and they're basically playing a game alongside you. It's a lot more volatile and random in those instances. In this game's case, actually, the way that they have your opponents work is instead of them playing a game alongside you, they have damage values that you need to meet. And everything that you do in this game, other than like a single, like 3 clear, does damage to your opponent. There are 3 types of ways to do damage. The aforementioned chains. So if you do a chain, it does 256 damage at 2, and then every subsequent part of the chain does an additional 256 damage. This is a hidden value. This was something that like the community figured out through like extensive data, analyzing, mining, whatever. So the idea is to set up these long chains, and each one will do an additional 256 points of damage. That starts to get diminishing returns at a × 9 after that. If you do like a × 10, each additional part of the chain will only do an additional 192 damage. The hidden health values are they start out fairly low, but then they get higher as the difficulty goes up. On easy difficulty, every opponent has between 1024 and 1280 health, which means that like you will kill literally all of them with a single ×6 chain on the easiest difficulty. The next one that we're on, normal, they start at 1408 and then they go up to 2688 because we're going to be getting into the Elite 4 trainers now, which is going to make this difficulty longer. But we're not going to get to Lance. Lance doesn't appear until at least on hard difficulty, which is sort of what people say is like the first difficulty you really beat the game. Another thing we haven't really touched on is the fact that you'll see on the bottom there it says versus com easy to very hard, bakuhatsu seriage off. That means scroll off. There's a hidden function in the game called scroll, or in this case I believe it's like scroll during destruction. But it's a fancy way of saying there's a hidden function in the game that while you are clearing blocks, you can also press an additional button. I believe it's the L button. Maybe it's the B button on it. It's
the Game Boy Color wouldn't have an L button, so it would have to be the B button or like the select button or something.
Yeah, so you'll see that like at the start of each one of these levels, Shuga is going to be, scrolling the screen up. The main reason you do that is to give yourself more blocks to create longer chains. With scroll on, you can actually set it to where you can scroll the blocks up while you are currently clearing blocks. That is disabled while there are blocks being cleared on screen when it is set to off. This is the standard difficulty people run at. Technically, I believe scroll on would be faster, but like it's less run because it's like more difficult and kind of more non-standard. So it's kind of like one of those paradoxical things like if you look at like Super Mario 64 leaderboards, the Virtual Console is a faster version, but because fewer people run it, it's less optimized.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, a lot of times I imagine part of this comes down to, obviously there's a lot of time and practice and skill that goes into running a puzzle game like this. And probably when people are playing casually and learning how to get, good at it and learn, make all these proper decisions in these very short periods of time, they probably played with the scroll off, and that just kind of ends up being what people end up wanting to do, and what people end up wanting to do ends up being what they speedrun most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't touched on the other means of doing damage. So just here, he's now cleared normal difficulty. So next up is hard. The opponents here have between 2,048 and 2,688 health, which is as much as Karen had as the final boss of the normal difficulty. So we're out of 2 out of 5 difficulties here. And these fights are going to take a lot longer to deal with on average now. The additional means of doing damage in this game, there's chains, and then, which I touched on, there's combos, which will do additional supplementary damage. So naturally, you only need 3 to get it clear, but you get a combo anytime you clear more than 3 blocks with a single.
They're like with like the 4, that one was 5. This one's gonna be another 5. Basically, anytime you can get the pattern to be more than 3 in a row, or like you can get cross shape where you have 2 different 3 in a rows going at the same time.
Yeah, so those will do supplemental damage. A thing to point out is 6 is kind of a magic number for that. So a 4 will do 128 damage, 5 will do 170, which that's an increase of 42, but then, yeah, that's 42. But then the next one will be 256, which is an increase of 86 damage. That's because it is extremely hard. Like, you can make a single straight line of 5 tiles. It is very hard to do that with 6. 6 usually means that you're clearing 2 separate two separate links of 3 altogether. So it's a little bit harder, so it rewards you with more damage. And then it increases again by another 48. Up to
the limiting factor, honestly, is just the number of blocks on the screen as well. You almost don't want to clear too many blocks because you don't have more blocks to use as like part of a next combo or chain as well. I imagine it's probably part of that as well. On top of just being harder to set up things past 6 too.
Yeah, combo values actually, like, they get a big boost if you can make a combo of 13 or higher, but that is like, that takes like some extremely bizarre board position that you're never realistically going to do with like a quick pace of play. There's one other, I don't know if this is going to ever come into play, but there's these gray exclamation mark blocks that they each one of those does an additional bonus of damage.
Like the versus modes, those would give you different types. So the way this is doing, they basically converted the 2v, like the 1v1 version of like the Tetris Attack, Pokemon Puzzle League into this kind of numerical value where you do damage based on it. In Pokemon Puzzle League, the gray blocks were very rare, and what they would do is leave you a different type of garbage that wouldn't clear with other garbage, so you had to directly connect. Normally, when you have a big stack of garbage, you'll see a little bit of it when Shuka takes a little bit, but like when you have like a big block of garbage that'll be multiple pieces, but as long as you have any piece of garbage touching a block, it'll clear the entire stack of garbage. The metal blocks won't be cleared through that.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why you scroll to the top at the beginning, because garbage blocks, they spawn a lot of blocks, but they can take quite a while to clear. Every time you hear you see the little animation of the opponent Pokemon, like, looks like it's doing an attack. That means that it, like, a hidden NPC is setting up a either a chain or a combo, and that's going to send garbage. Those blue blocks you saw in the Dragonair fight, they're going to drop from the top. And as Ghoul mentioned, when you if you clear any line, any 3 blocks, any setup that's touching a garbage block, it clears the garbage, which takes a fair bit of time, but later on you'll start to see that it actually can be used to your advantage. In fact, multiplayer games of... Yeah, there you see the gray exclamation mark box. Multiplayer games of Pokemon Puzzle League, or really any Puzzle League, are quite infamous for taking an absurdly long time. And the reason is because garbage can be weaponized so easily in this game compared to, like, a Puyo where garbage is just like instant death, for example.
I would say this is a pretty common experience. A lot of good puzzly players will say, at least in my experience. But like, when I was a kid, the way that I would play the game would be to use the garbage the CPU would throw at me to make my own chains to throw back at the CPU because I was very bad at lining them up myself. You kind of end up with like, it's one of the easiest ways when you're still new to the game to actually make chains and combos. It's not a very good one compared to the sheer speed at which an actually good player can do, but it does mean that you can kind of use the fact that these garbage are dropping additional blocks on your side of the field to your advantage.
A lot of puzzle games, like, they tend to naturally make for just fun speed games because it's like, as you get better at them, speed just naturally comes along as a skill. They are famous for being very volatile RNG-wise. This is actually probably a less volatile category than many puzzle block puzzle games, tile matching puzzle games, match 3, whatever you want to call them. And it's the kind of thing you just see how the runner, in this case, Shuga, just like, every time he makes a move, you see him moving other blocks, and then like once those are exactly where he wants them to be, he's going to make a third and then a fourth setup. It's like, when you play this game enough, you get familiar enough with pattern recognition to just be able to see like 2 moves ahead, and it's really cool because it's like it combines a mechanical like dexterity skill with like strategy and planning in a way that just it gets really rewarding to like get good at this game. I've always had a really big fondness for the Puzzle League series. Because of that.
Super sick speedrun and super sick game. It is kind of neat. One of the things that's really annoying about Pokemon Puzzle League, like even though it's probably the more popular version of the game because the N64 just was a more popular console for this type of stuff. And that also came out when Pokemon Fever was at its biggest. But this game, because of the lack of an opponent, what ends up happening a lot in Pokemon Puzzle League runs is you'll get the runners like some of best, and it'll be just comical. Like it'll be like every single fight could theoretically be done in about 5 seconds if the enemy just decides to completely fill their blocks up in a way and then just not clear a line in the right amount of time. They'll just die. It's very funny. And then they'll also have games where the CPU will just refuse to give up the ghost, and they'll have a fight that'll go 5 minutes out of nowhere.
Exactly, yeah, it's pretty brutal RNG, like, it's a pretty brutal RNG genre of speed game. If you ever watch like old school Tetris Attack runs, I think I remember like, now I'm kind of curious to look at this. Tetris Attack. Yeah, it's like the very hard difficulty will be 634, and then like the sum of bests is like 520. Like runs that are 6 minutes long don't have like a minute of time save. And it's just like, that is super lucky. Like a standard run, if the runner who holds record, like if they were to just do a no reset attempt, that run could be anything from like 7 minutes to like 15. For like no fault of their own.
Yeah. The neat thing is that regardless of how the run goes due to the luck involved in them, the skill is just totally apparent, which is just awesome. It's one of the best things about these puzzle speedruns like this. Again, you see him right here. He's lining up, 2, 3 combos already as these are already falling. And then all of a sudden we have a 10 chain out of nowhere, which pretty much one-shot this Ghastly.
Yeah, so we're now into the super hard difficulty. Morty has 3,200 health. A 10 chain would be 2,240 damage, so about 2/3 of the health bar, plus any additional combos add into that. So yeah, that's like most of its health bar just gone. As mentioned, like you probably don't want to get too many 10 like combos, just because like at that point you start getting diminishing returns. But realistically, you just don't have the board space to make like ultra long combos. So yeah, if you're going for more than 10, you're kind of trying to go for like a kill at that point, which he was able to easily do in 24 seconds.
で、次のステージ6の、
It's pretty neat. I imagine that there's a lot of like behind the scenes practice that goes into board management for the right type of combos where one screen worth of blocks ends up being a one-shot kill because you don't want to have to refill the board once you clear it all the way through. I imagine that just like a couple of like a basic chain or basic combo, you'll notice we're getting a lot of 4s or like a lot of 6s, a lot of 8s as we're comboing through and then getting to our big combo. I wonder if just getting like the 13 isn't enough by itself. It's very cool to see us manage our blocks in that
次の
regard as
柳
well.
さんのパウアウは3500超えということで、ね、9連鎖で2048のダメージなんで、相当多いのが分かりますよね。緑入れて、赤の4
Kind of almost makes it become a bit of a math problem as well, probably for the runner, where they have to kind of. I'm sure that they don't have it memorized for the amount of damage each of these combos is going to do, but they could probably intuit when a combo isn't going to kill and what they need to do to actually increase the damage on it, just from the sheer amount of time to play.
I gotta reference it.
Alrighty, chat room.
Yeah, so it actually is like you see when it gets down to like 2 squares and a bunch of garbage. That can actually be like a problem if you haven't done lethal damage, because then you might get flooded with garbage and have nothing to clear it. But yeah, just totally calculated at that point. Also, you could choose any Pokemon. Chose Blossom, which I respected.
Blossom's cute. It's not a very good Pokemon, but it's very cute.
As somebody who's played my share of Gen 3 random battles, like, Blossom will find its use a surprising amount of time.
As GK was mentioning right there, if we didn't kill on that, we would have had about 5 rows of blocks on our like 7-row screen, which means that we would have very much needed to quickly pull up a couple of rows just to have room to work with. If you only have 3 blocks and they're not the same color, you can't clear any garbage, obviously, so you would just lose.
Yeah, that's usually like the kill state of a standard multiplayer game between between 2 players is just when you reach the
so
top
here
of
we're
the
going to
screen,
use the garbage with you see how right there the garbage turned into more blocks that fell, which Shuka ended up using, or Juga used to actually continue the combo. Like, very cool stuff. It's relatively basic. Once you start playing, you learn how to do it pretty quickly, but it's so much fun. These games are so addicting.
Exactly.
I can't recommend it enough if you haven't played these games. I literally was just playing Panel Upon on Switch yesterday for a bit.
Yeah, it's on Panel de Pon, like the original is on the Switch Virtual Console, even in or Switch NSO, even in North America.
I think pretty much all of them are on at this point, because there's also Pokemon Puzzle League is on the
they probably don't.
app.
They probably don't want to spend for the Tetris license again, even if they even could get it at this point.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh. Right there, he didn't have technically any way of making a clear, but the damage was already on the way for lethal.
Yeah, so now we're on to like the Elite Four, and now we're getting into like where their health values get to be up to 4,000. Something to mention.
I haven't seen this run in full. I'm wondering if there's going to be a point where we have to kind of stop our combos at the halfway point to refill. Yeah, it looks like we're doing it right here. We kind of did a little mini combo to get a bit of damage in, like some chip in, and then we're going for the full kill on a second combo. Just to make sure that we don't end up in the state where we have 3 blocks and enough garbage to kill us. That's kind of neat, actually. Oh.
Doesn't quite have lethal, so he's gonna go for the clear there.
Yeah, now we're having to play off of the garbage, trying to get that last little bit for the kill. Good recovery by the runner here. Noticing and kind of getting himself into a state where he... There we go.
Okay, he knew that he had like 1 sliver left, so he went for the combo to get the last little bit of damage, so that he didn't have to wait for all of that to clear to get another chain. Calculated. So that was a bit of a sticky situation, but was able to recover. A thing to note is that when you are at the top of the screen, you have a very brief window to like start something, and as long as there are blocks, in a like currently being cleared. As long as there are blocks currently being cleared on the screen, the game will not initiate the kill state. So you can perpetually move blocks so long as you're maintaining a chain or combo, even if you are at the top of the screen.
And like anytime you like cause garbage to fall, like that also gives you another couple of frames as well. It's not uncommon for like high-level Tetris attack games to just have both players have a stack of garbage that goes well above the top of the screen for basically the entire game.
It's not too uncommon in like puzzle game speedruns, like when they're specifically like multiplayer type puzzle game speedruns. So like Puyo, for example, it's not too uncommon for like an actual strat to be to set up smaller combos, because even if you're sending over more garbage, it takes so long to get those going. So like there's kind of a send a smaller set to start with. And that is the super hard difficulty done. So next up is going to be intense, which is the very final difficulty, also called very hard difficulty. So yeah, every opponent in this difficulty has more health than every opponent of every previous difficulty. Like, the health value of Lance is 4,608 in super hard. And then in very hard, Faulkner here is at 5,120. So like intense alone is like almost a third of the run, if not more. Yeah, so here he's setting up for a 4 and 5 because of the way, gravity works. The like sets of 2 at the top, like the sets of 2 that are higher up will interact with the falling blocks slightly sooner, so it's like that's how you can actually get like 2 additional components to a chain from a single drop of garbage clears. Yeah, as kind of being talked about in chat, Tetris attack, having the Tetris license, that was a more common thing back in the 90s of companies to buy the name for Tetris to attach to things. There was all kinds of games from that era that had Tetris in like the name.
Tetris almost became like a synonym for just puzzle game in a way, almost more so than Tetris being what it is now, with the tetraminos and the recognizable blocks and everything.
Yeah, there was
I think there was like a Tetris 2. I know there was Tetris that existed at one point.
There was also Wordtris, which was like, it doesn't really play anything like Tetris, but it is, falling letters and that you use to make words. I actually remember it being really funny when I was watching Spike, our good friend Spike Vegeta, playing Wordtris, and he spelled the word MHOS, which is a real word, but it is so esoteric we did not think it would actually show up in the game's dictionary. It's literally just the word ohm backwards. And everyone who played the game, or everyone who's watching the stream, lost their mind, like, what is this? Anyway, tangent aside, that's just, yeah, like, they use Tetris, like Tris or some component of the Tetris name for just about everything at the time. But nowadays,
the Tetris being such a smash hit on Game Boy was literally the game that caused the Game Boy to become a household success. Which later would be supplanted by Pokemon, funnily enough.
There was a whole, like, the Tetris license in and of itself is a fascinating story. There's a great video by the gaming historian on the history of the Tetris license, a whole bunch of things. But yeah, they're a lot more protective of it now that they have the Tetris company, and I think they mainly are trying to use it to make just Tetris games. Kind of a fun thing that I've noticed that everyone does, and I completely get it, but I don't know if it's like, this is actually like a sound strategy, or if it's literally just human patterns. But whenever you start a game, you'll see that like there's a little bit of a gap and a random number of blocks on the top, and almost everyone will set their rows to be completely flush.
I mean, it technically allows you to get a couple of extra, like one extra line of, blocks by doing that. I don't know how big of a difference it really makes, but it is one of those things like having that nice, clear, flat starting base before you start to kind of demolish the tower makes it just kind of easier as a starting point. But you're right, it might actually be optimal in some situations to not fully set yourself up to do that. But
something we also haven't touched on, you can time like a perfect swap right as like a combo is set to clear, or right as a chain is set to clear, and it'll extend a chain even if you're not dropping something in to fall in advance. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think it's like a 2 frames, so like, you know, 1/30th of a second window, if I'm remembering.
I don't know what the actual frame data is. It is one of the weird and kind of cool things is if you play Puzzle League on the N64, it has a tutorial on how to do that. Like it's like an intended, like, recognized thing that the game knows it can do. And like that game has like some of the most in-depth tutorials with like some really high level play, little like tips and tricks for how to play through it.
Yeah, it's effectively just like a manipulation of the game's AI by perfectly timing a swap so that it recognizes that the blocks that you have just put in the way are now a part of a chain rather than like starting a new chain. If that makes sense.
It's one of those things that like if you see it and start doing it, it makes sense. The hardest thing about it when you're actually playing is timing it, because if you time it incorrectly, the game won't recognize. It'll say, "Oh, you made a new movement, so therefore this is a new chain," as opposed to being part of the previous one. It's very fun, very difficult to actually execute.
Anytime you pull it off, you feel like a boss. And I've seen
Shuga feel so good.
Shuga has pulled it off a couple times here. It's not something, because everything you get in this game is completely random. So it's like it's not something you really like plan beforehand. It's just you get so good at these games that like speedrunning becomes kind of the natural next step to like, I'm already so good I can beat this game on intense, barely even trying. Like, why don't we make it fast?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like if you wonder like what does it take to get good at a puzzle game like this, it really just kind of boils down to pattern recognition. If you watch good Tetris players, good Panel de Pon players, they get to the point where they'll see a board and just kind of mentally know what to do with it.
Oh, if you've, I actually recommend if you want to see something like this, there's a YouTuber by the name of Wumbo who is just an incredible Tetris player. Some of his older videos, he actually had an eye tracker, and like you could see the way he processes the game because of how the eye tracker works. And like he would be looking at his board and like constantly shuffling his eyes over to like the pieces that would be dropping. Obviously, you can't really do that here because you can't really see what the next pieces you get are, but like you can kind of imagine something similar where he's looking at like, okay, I can combine these three and then move this block all the way over here and put that into a position for a chain, and it's just kind of the way that processes all at once.
And a lot of the other stuff, like the movement, how do you get the blocks in position, weirdly enough, it just becomes muscle memory. You just say, I want the cursor to go here, and it just kind of does it. I got to the state a little bit with Catherine, which is a game that like doesn't have the same speed requirements, but it was like the same thing. It's like, I want to do this, and your brain doesn't process, I want the cursor to go here. Your body just says the cursor goes there, do it, is kind of the best way I can describe when you get to the stage where you can play this game to this level.
Yeah, you hit sort of a flow state.
Yeah.
You hit sort of a flow state where it's like your brain just kind of mentally understands pattern recognition so well with like a mechanic that like your hands move faster than your like brain processes the words to explain what you're doing.
足りたわ。ごめんなさい。私の感覚はこれぐらいです。はい。足りるかなって思ったら。
It is really interesting watching this on the later difficulties. You can really see the difference in how Suga is tackling these because the HP value is so much higher. Again, we're really being careful to not use all of our blocks and get ourselves in a situation where some garbage from the enemy is going to end the game for us.
Yeah, like the earlier fights you saw, he was basically clearing the entire board because he knew it would be either sufficient or very close to sufficient amount of damage. But now here he's leaving enough room that he can raise the board back up and give himself enough for a new chain.
I do
also shout out to Jinx Cry. We haven't talked about the Pokemon here, but they do play the game cries, and Jinx has such a wonderful cry. I hate this Pokemon. I play Comp Gen 1 sometimes, and Jinx is the worst. She's so evil in early generations. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's yeah, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but not a big deal. It really is cool watching this game. Sometimes that's such a fun game.
確率下がってそうな気はするんですけど、それでも複数回やってくるので、ねというところで、とっても、削り切るのが大変になっておりますが。
There's a weird spot here. Okay, cool. Really did not have a lot of blocks to work with.
Yeah, so once you get to Will, the enemies have HP values in the 6,000s, which means you basically need to do like 3 10 chains in order to do enough damage. And I want to say they recover if you don't do enough damage quickly. So like that's another thing you have to keep an eye out. It's not too big a deal if you work really fast, but it can mess with things. I'm not entirely sure on these mechanics. I mostly reviewed the speedrun.com notes and just kind of go off of like for the more detailed data and just kind of go off of my own experience with these. But yeah.
To my knowledge on this, the one thing about this game that I do know is basically if you can play either Panel Upon or Pokemon Puzzle League, you can do this run as well, basically. It's the exact same skill set. Just like with some slight differences to accommodate the smaller board and the fact that it's a damage rate as opposed to the, killing an AI opponent that's playing the same game as you are.
Yes, there's 3 opponents left. If the health value chart is to be believed here, Bruno has more health on so Bruno actually has more health on hard, super hard, and intense than the trainers that come after. I suspect it's hard to tell when you're playing this game because you get so in the zone, but I suspect that like the later opponents, even though they have less health, they tend to be more active in sending garbage, and like you'll see they're hitting chains of like 4, 5, 6 times and just hitting you with just mountains of garbage, which
especially
in theory is supposed to hurt.
Yeah, I would say like especially for a game like this as well, it's probably easy for them to tune that because there's not an actual CPU playing, so they could just tune the rate at which the garbage is sent or the type of garbage that's sent. Obviously, like the combo garbage is not nearly as problematic as the chain garbage can be at times, because if you clear it with one, you clear the whole thing. The way that chain garbage works is that you get a 2 chain, you get the 1 line, a 3 chain, you get 2 lines, and so on and so forth. But when you hit it with a clear, it only clears the bottom line of garbage to become blocks, meaning that it can take a lot more to clear from there. You do end up occasionally with some really fun things that happen where you can clear you have like chain garbage below, a bit of combo garbage above, and then more chain garbage above that, and you can start clearing the blocks from the combo garbage that ended up between the chains, which is just such a fun feeling when that happens. It's pretty rare because the board just isn't large enough, and especially in the GBC version.
Yeah, combos are actually quite useful because they can send like a half width block of garbage, which you might think that that's less, but it's actually worse to be hit by though, because they they take up as much vertical space, but they don't give you as much when you clear it. So like combos actually can be pretty potent in terms of like the garbage game, even though that's a little bit less important here.
倒しきりたいんですけど、ちょっと足りないので、パネルがね、この足りるわ。ちょっと待って。
Kind of funny to see Murkrow sending poison as poison garbage, by the way.
ああ、倒せました。
They didn't even have
They
didn't even have Murkrow. Like,
ステージ13やって
I don't think Murkrow was I don't think they had a poison type in the card game. Murkrow, I think, no, they invented Dark and Steel in the card game in Gen 2.
Yeah, well, technically Darkness and Metal type. They're not actually.
Pokémon King.
They're technically different types than the TCG.
声聞こえてますか？大丈夫ですか？
So here we are on
Probably
the
because
final opponent.
連鎖をしてるんですけど。
Probably because this is based on puzzling for the N64. They probably just didn't have art assets for Dark and Steel type Pokemon.
とってもね素敵な BGM が
For garbage.
おります。海流いっぱいない
And
鳴き
just
声。
didn't want to make it, so like, okay, Mark, poison's close enough.
で、渡るさんの海流がメガ海流になってい
And
れば
again, there's plenty of precedence for it with the TCG obviously having to accommodate the lower number of typings.
で、今渡るさんは一旦
So here, just complete abusing of the massive amount of garbage that Lance's Dragonite sent to just generate an absurd chain. Like, this is gonna go to like 13.
まだ、
And notice we're also getting combos as the game's going too.
ちょっと足りない
Yeah, so stopping it at 14 so that can use those three vertical blocks to clear the garbage at the top there. Yeah, that was close. Yeah, that was close. Like if RNG had been really unfavorable, might not have been. That might have actually been a loss. Yeah, no, this is a
we probably have a little bit of time
CC.
for it.
This is a 1 CC across this whole run.
Don't jinx it.
It's fine.
This
is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, runner's PB is a 38, like 28, I believe. So you know this
So
is
you know,
not
right there,
PB,
we're
but
actually even holding back a little bit to make sure that we have stuff to work with in the future. If you notice right there, we could have gotten a 6, but we didn't want to put any blocks. We're playing it a little bit slow. Oh, I say that we get a nice little 6 there. So we have a. Felt like we had enough of a buffer. Yeah, we're just gonna keep comboing off of the Dragonite's garbage by the looks of it.
私はもう大丈夫ですね。
just
ここが回復ある。
go for a secure kill here.
はい、ということでタイマーストップです。
And there it is. That's the end of the run.
ちょっと海流戦。
Close a couple times. I almost jinxed it. But you know, 1 CC every battle, which is what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 14, and then 45. That's like 67 battles in 41 minutes. So superbly done from Shuga, very skillful player. Honestly, I recommend these games. They're very accessible at like, you know, low to high skill levels, and they're super rewarding to get good at. It's one of the things I've always loved about like puzzle games, like block puzzle games, is just getting better at them over and over. Anyways,
and like it's a very generous skill floor. Like you can not be really good at this game and still clear the lower difficulties, obviously. And you know, it's one of the things where it's like easy to learn, hard to master, basically, in the best possible way.
I think that's going to do it for us. I have a couple other runs this week that I'll be commentating. I dragged Ghoul in on this Christmas evening to Christmas morning my time, Christmas evening his time, to join me for a little bit of puzzle talk. But I hope you enjoyed.
Enjoy the rest of RTA Japan, everybody.
The end of that run kind of just snuck up on us, but yeah, thank you both for being here. Thank you for commentating. Do you either of you have any shoutouts do you want to give before the run's done?
No, just shoutouts to RTA in Japan. Wonderful event. I like doing this because I like this event. I got the privilege of running in it like 5 years ago, and it's always been kind of one that I've wanted to see succeed. So now that they're doing money for Médecins Sans Frontières, aka Doctors Without Borders, Yeah, it's a wonderful event for a wonderful cause, and I've met some wonderful people through it.
RTA 道場というイベント
Well said.
All right, that should do it for us. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you both for commentating, and thank you all for watching. Once again, this is English Speedrun Restreams and our English restream of RTA in Japan. That was Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, VS Computer Easy, Intense, Scroll Off. Thank you to ghostkumo and to Ghoul for commentating. We got a few runs up on the docket. We have up next is Puzzle Bobble 2 on the Neo Geo Arcade Archives, into Moonlight Ghosts, Toho Komakyo, and of course Punch Out. I've seen a few people mention that. Got a stacked schedule coming up, and we're gonna get prepped for that. So stick around while we get prepared, and we'll be back very, very shortly.
この世界に飛び込んできてくれたという方なので、つながりがあってとってもエモい感じになっております。私もね応援しようと思っておりますので、皆様もぜひお楽しみください。ということで、ポケモンでパネポンは以上となります。ありがとうございました。